Story 1. Both started as non-political comedy subreddits that just posted screenshots of funny tweets. Now it's just your typical rage-bait political subreddit. Story 2. Advice animals interesting as fuck clever comebacks. There was an attempt facepalm pics economic collapse idiocracy. And those are just off the top of my head. Story 3. As a 12-year-plus user of Reddit, all of them. When the 2016 election started to happen, there were a heap of pro-Trump subreddits. In response, there was a heap of anti-Trump subreddits. Reddit became way more politicized and way less fun. Story 4. Let's see. White people Twitter, clever comebacks. Murdered by words, advice animals, pics, advice animals. There was an attempt. I'm not counting stuff like politics because it's literally for politics. Getting dominated by a certain type of politics doesn't change that. Also, I don't care about millennials because I'm not a millennial. Final note. These aren't subreddits I picked for hating their ideology. Politically, they range between bearable and acceptable to me, but you have to be super biased to claim these subreddits aren't ruined by politics, US politics to be specific. Story 5. Every single one of them that didn't moderate political posts enough. Because once they realized that the subreddit isn't moderating well enough, boom, thousands upon thousands of posts about politics. Story 6. Pictures and texts are the worst I've ever seen, but I've had to mute so many seemingly innocuous subreddits for aggressive political posting I can't even recount how many, easily at least 50, no exaggeration. Story 7. All of them. The whole site. Every main subreddit has the same 10 moderators. Some moderate over 100 subreddits. It's a pure monoculture now. Whatever side you are on, you have to acknowledge it wasn't like this before 2016. Story 8. Oh, where do I even start? AskReddit used to be a place for random, funny questions, but now it is like a full-on debate club with memes sprinkled in. Science was another one that went downhill. Half the posts are about scientific studies that look more like conspiracy theories. Honestly, it is tough to find a subreddit that has not had a political invasion at this point. It is like trying to enjoy a good TV show, but every commercial is a political ad. Story 9. A lot of them. After the election, a huge number of subreddit communities have started automatically banning users who participate in other subreddit communities that they don't agree with. I'm a regular Reddit user for years, and I find myself no longer wanting to use the platform. Imagine trying to post on something interesting that pops up in your feed and automatically getting banned because you've participated in another subreddit that severely mentally ill, power-hungry moderators don't like. Many of those subreddit communities are ones that are listed in this thread. For example, pics. Story 10. From my own experience, in no particular order, Reddit pictures. Reddit murdered by words. Reddit there was an attempt. The latter subreddit in particular went completely bonkers, all because one of its moderators is an actual Hamas sympathizer. Supporting the Palestinian people is one thing, but putting from the river to the sea in one's profile and changing an entire subreddit's decor and general purpose to be all about one's personal gospel of truth is another. Finally, one that may possibly become completely ruined if its moderators don't get a handle on things is Reddit shitty movie details, as many of its top posts lately have all been barely disguised political opinions. Story 11. Does this count already political subreddits? Because late-stage capitalism got taken over by Marxists and Leninists a few years back, and a statement as bland and milquetoast as, "I think maybe China is doing bad things to Uyghur Muslims," will get you called a liberal and banned forever. Story 12. Man, this post hits hard. A lot of subreddits really did get messed up once politics started creeping in. Some used to be chill and fun, but now it's all about the drama and endless debates. Like, AskReddit was a goldmine for random questions and funny responses, but now it's just a battleground for hot takes. Even meme subs like memes are full of political posts. It's like, can we just go back to the simple days of memes and dumb questions? Story 13. Out of the loop, most questions are not in good faith, and it's used to spread awareness of the issue. Top comments are supposedly not supposed to be political, but it happens quite often. It was good for finding out where a meme came from or whatever drama is happening on the internet. I just hate that anything political is just a way to spread a particular viewpoint. Story 14. I haven't even signed up for any political subreddit, yet my feed has been full of political posts since last month due to the United States elections. And all of them are terrible. Story 15. They have a bot that scans targeted subreddits, and if you make a comment, they automatically ban you unless you delete the comment and message the moderators saying you will never visit that subreddit again. Story 16. Reddit AskReddit used to be the go-to for random funny questions, and now it's like a political debate forum with a few memes thrown in. Even Reddit movies has turned into a who's woke and who's not conversation instead of just talking about good films. Like, can we just watch stuff and enjoy it without a breakdown of every actor's political views? Story 17. Better question is which one hasn't been ruined. Many Reddit moderators overcensor, but banning political posts in non-political subreddits would be good. Story 18. Pretty much all of them were allowed to be introduced. Even the political ones were ruined because moderators decided not agreeing with their political beliefs meant you weren't worthy of being alive, much less having access to their little fiefdom. Story 19. All the Canadian subreddits. All the nominal name Canadian subreddit, except maybe r/Canada, are leaned heavily toward progressive thinking. This results in various Canadian subreddits with appended prefixes or suffixes so they can have discussions with less moderation, all the way to having more conservative discussions. An example is r/Vancouver. Ban anyone under some random non-inclusiveness or incivility, and it ended up spawning r/Nice Vancouver, r/Vancouver BC, and r/Vancouver Canada, and that's the minimum that I know of. Another example is r/British Columbia about being progressive, and they literally lost their mind when the provincial election was barely won by the New Democratic Party, the Progressive Party. You even see comments where they want to filter immigrants because both Richmond, Chinese, and Hong Kong are dominated and Surrey, South Asian dominated, when British Columbia conservative, while the high school simulated voting had the Chinese-heavy neighborhoods voting conservative. When Burnaby North is the island of blue among the sea of orange, as expected by typical high school student vote, it gets extra attention, and last I checked, it has 50 to 80% Asians. Even without the moderation, you will never get good answers from them if you want to do something that is more conservative-leaning, which is to say driving and finding parking. Story 20. The subreddit economy consists mostly of political posts and lacks valuable economic discussion. If you want real economic discussion, head to the subreddit Ask Economics. They have much better discussions and teachings about the economy, supported by extensive data and research. Story 21. They automatically ban accounts that have any activity with any conservative subreddits, regardless of whether you say anything political in your posting on interesting as f*******. Story 22. All of them. Politics isn't just red versus blue. It's the power structures that dominate life. Reddit has gotten worse over the years due to a desire to extract revenue over community, and that community placing their own score over the community itself, I would say, are both symptoms of how society is structured for individual gain. For a more simple answer, leopards ate my face. I fully get that being American and the election really hurts and has some very nasty outcomes for people. But it's often been pretty vindictive against people. But post-election it's become largely just Harris lost. So let's blame people who have had family members killed by a bombing campaign she supported. Or having a snide glee in, well, Trump's going to flatten Gaza. Because I get the idea of Trump's next term being very bad for a lot of people. But placing the blame on those grieving rather than wealthy policymakers who have run a terrible campaign, gloating that non-American citizens are going to be slaughtered as some sort of payback for not voting for someone sending the bombs and bullets, is morally bankrupt. Story 23. There's always been some politics on there, but most threads discuss the religion and theology in general. Now, every other post is something political, usually about Trump, whether Jesus was a socialist, why Christians should support a certain policy, and so on. But there's little actual discussion on the religion itself. Story 24. The objective, number one answer should be Reddit picks. But pretty much most of them, including this one. There is a sub called Reddit Millennials, which is just another political echo chamber. The only reason Reddit Millennials, different spelling, isn't like that is because they banned political talk. Thank God. Story 25. Funny enough, r/politics. Before Trump got elected the first time, it was actually a decent place for political discussion. Not the best, but you could get a nuanced take in. Holy shit. Did that subreddit lose its mind after 2016, and the moderators just completely gave up? Now it's one hyperbolic comment after another. Story 26. Any and all that don't stop it and delete the posts right away. Astroturfers and mentally ill zealots are always looking for new communities to infest. They are literally like bugs. Story 27. Anytime I see a black person in the video as the negative party, I already know the comments are going to be full of whistleblowing and passive-aggressive racism in politics. Story 28. The Gamergate crowd influenced a generation of young boys into treating gaming as a political battlefield instead of a hobby for fun. They'll shout about how people need to keep politics out of gaming, but then make up lies about any game that lets you choose pronouns while promoting random Japanese role-playing games with big-chested female characters and developers accused of misconduct if they can claim it as a victory against what they perceive as political correctness. Now, they dislike game journalists and call them biased whenever a game score is even slightly different from what they expect. Anyone who cares about gaming should support journalists, encourage new players to join the community, and advocate for games to market to them. They should be most concerned about the monopolies harming labor rights, destroying independent and successful game studios, and stifling developers' passion by taking away their rights and creative freedom. Instead, we encounter conspiracy theorists creating falsehoods about female gamers and developers and blaming them for societal issues. Story 29. All of Reddit was ruined. I have been a user for over a decade, and the site is basically unusable. When I load the app, I do a quick glance at the top posts in my feed before looking at the one or two subreddits that are not completely taken over and then closing the app to go somewhere else. This site used to be so cool and a place where you would learn interesting things. It is a real shame. Story 30. Reddit pictures. It was taken over by Kamala Harris bots spamming all day every day. The moderators were either complicit or didn't stop it. Many of the accounts posting had been set up over the last couple of years, but had no activity until they started posting this information. I suspect some of the bots have time remaining on their lease because they still occasionally post. Most have gone dormant again for 4 years, I suspect. Utterly ruined the subreddit. Story 31. R/non-credible defense is one that hurts. As an early user, it was a fun little niche place to joke about the hardware side of conflicts and meme about the A10, with the understanding that most of us didn't actually buy into the nonsense we were promoting, such as the M14 or M60 being the ultimate rifles, Three Gorges, and Saddam Hussein, for example. The subreddit had been on a downward spiral for a few months prior to 2022, and Ukraine was the final nail in the coffin. What had once been a fun alternative to other communities quickly became the Watch Russian Conscripts Die subreddit, and it has become even more unpleasant since. I don't recognize that community anymore. It makes me sad what Reddit did to it. Story 32. Someone posted that they wish the United Healthcare CEO killer got away with murder. Politics aside, it is pretty brutal at face value. Story 33. Very recently, the subreddit Ask Ouija is just people baiting the Ouija board into saying something hateful, and it's the only word that ever makes sense to fill the blank. Story 34. It used to be about the beautiful views, holiday getaways, and funny interactions between Scottish people and foreigners, usually Americans. Now it's just whining about the next independence referendum. Story 35. I didn't even realize it until I mentioned that a certain kind of post was flooding the place, and people might think twice about posting them. I was even polite about it. Instant ban. It turns out, if you are in any way critical of how the subreddit is run, or say anything that is interpreted as that, you're immediately banned. Upon getting banned, I found out that there's a community of exiles who are much nicer. Story 36. Not by politics, but by a total lack of interest in moderators actually moderating the comments. Once the collective mind takes over, the community is lost. No reasoning, no logic, no fairness, just everyone agreeing with each other and silencing dissenters. Story 37. I distinctly remember a decade ago the conservative subreddit being a genuinely interesting place to visit if you had an academic interest in political ideology. It wasn't about supporting Trump or the Republican Party. It wasn't even US-centric. It was a place for a range of discussions from center-right viewpoints on any number of global issues. In early 2016, it was a great place to discuss the impending Brexit referendum and, as a Brit, to find insight and pieces from Eurozone countries on the potential impacts. I feel like I knew more about other countries' political situations back then, partly due to visiting there. As an example, I feel I would have had a heads up on the build-up to the recent happenings in South Korea, as it is something that would have been discussed on the 2015 version of that subreddit. Story 38. I have no idea if it was ever good or not, but given the name, I'd like to think it was at least interesting once upon a time. Either way, the skeptic subreddit is probably the worst subreddit I've ever had the misfortune of stumbling into.